Welcome to Diligence Inside America's Boardroom. I'm Troy Paredes, a former SEC Commissioner and founder of Paredes Strategies. I'm honored to have the chance to be your guest host today, while your regular host, TK Kerstetter, is traveling on a special board-related assignment. And I'm particularly excited to have current Commissioner Caroline Crenshaw join us today to talk about the SEC, talk about boards of directors, talk about corporate governance, and other things that may be on the commissioner's mind. So welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. And I would be remiss if I also didn't thank you for all your public service.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And before we get started, I know you just let me kick off with the views I expressed today are my own and do not necessarily reflect those of the agency, the staff, or my fellow commissioners. But that aside, thank you so much for having me here today. And I look forward to our discussion.
No problem with the disclaimer. So there's a ton going on, as you well know. There's a ton going on at the SEC, but not just at the SEC. There's a ton going on across capital markets in the U.S. And abroad. There's a ton going on when it comes to regulation beyond securities regulation. There's a ton going on when it comes to corporate governance. And there's a long list of things that I won't go through, but suffice it to say, a ton that's going on all those fronts. And all of those things come together. And they come together in impactful ways for boards of directors, for senior management, for companies as a whole. So from your vantage point, what are the priorities for you, and what are the priorities at the commission right now?
Certainly. So, I think my priorities are guided really mainly by the agency's mission and priorities, right? To ensure capital formation, to maintain fair, orderly, and efficient markets, which seems really especially imperative in current market structure times like we have now, with things like the meme stocks and with geopolitical concerns, and making sure investors are protected with all those other things going on. So for me, that's really sort of the guiding principle of everything that I'm prioritizing. And so that leads me to some of the market structure questions. We've put out a report. We're thinking about various market structure questions and what's working, what's not. We're thinking about what is actually a recommendation. We're thinking about a variety of questions on the investment management perspective. But for those listening to the call on the corporation finance, we obviously have a fairly large agenda too. I think ESG is one that's really got a lot of people's attention. And what I'll just note there is obviously climate's getting a lot of attention, but I think it's really important not to forget the G too. So I think for me, focusing on the governance issues, in addition to E and thinking about consistent, comparable, reliable disclosures, but really thinking about what things we need to reconsider in the governance space. Proxy plumbing questions. Are there other questions like executive comp we need to be thinking about? We've put out proposals on 10b5-1, on clawbacks, on a couple of others. So I really want folks to look at all of those questions and comment on them, on the proposals we have out, but also on things that we have not focused on. And I really look forward to feedback there and what really corporate boards and others think we should be focusing on as well. And then I think private markets is always an interesting question. I think we constantly need to be assessing whether the balance between the public markets and the private markets is the right one. I think we need to be thinking about, whether the question is a dearth of IPOs or not, whether there are IPOs and maybe that balance is the right one, maybe it's not. So I think just constantly being vigilant about that, because our public markets, I think, are so critical. And I think we need to be constantly assessing that. And then I'll just throw in the last, I would be remiss if I didn't mention crypto. I think everyone is thinking about crypto right now and various implications. And so I think that's also one that we absolutely need to focus on.
So all of that is apropos of there's a lot going on. As you think about it, as I'm sure you do from a board's perspective, realizing lots of different companies in terms of their size, in terms of their sector, in terms of the focus, the strategy, and the risk. So realizing all of that diversity across companies and boards accordingly. of all of those items that you mentioned, is there a particular something, whether it's a rulemaking or particular topic, that you think it would be especially useful to draw board's attention to?
So I think, as you mentioned, boards have numerous and important responsibility, and there are just a panoply of issues that they need to be focused on, and it depends on size, on structure, on the business line. But two that immediately come to mind for me are geopolitical concerns and cyber issues that are inextricably and of course intertwined. Not inextricably, but of course intertwined. And I think boards need to be thinking about both of these issues. They need to be thinking about the impact that various issues abroad are going to have on them. What is the short-term impact? What's the long-term impact going to be? And I think cyber absolutely has to be a top priority. It's certainly something that keeps me up at night. And I think boards need to be thinking about whether the approaches that the companies have are comprehensive. And I think they need to be constantly vigilant. I think it's not enough to say we have policies and procedures that meet the standards, or did a couple of weeks ago. I think you have to be constantly reassessing, and you have to be asking what your management's expertise is around cyber. What changes have you made? And I think you just have to be really on high alert on that, maybe now more than ever. And so those are two not small issues, but certainly issues that I think everybody needs to be thinking about.
Well, and your point, Commissioner, about the need to essentially look for those opportunities for ongoing improvement in terms of your control environment, policies, procedures, other kinds of controls, and the like. But also, I take it from an overall governance perspective. And so to broaden out the discussion a bit, when you think about hallmarks or indicia of good corporate governance, are there some general ideas or thoughts that come to mind, whether it's about board composition, whether it's about practices, whether it's about information flow? But from that broader perspective, any particular aspects that you think really are indicia, realizing, again, not one size fits all and there's room for variation, but things that you tend to focus on?
So I think all the things you just mentioned are all important things to keep in mind. I think, they have to know the business, which I think is clear, but it's not enough just to take, what's being presented to you at a board meeting and accept it at face value, right? I think you really have to dig in, ask hard questions, because that's going to be better for everyone. It's going to be better for the investors. It's going to be better for the company, especially if those questions are answered early before problems present themselves. So I think that's, for example, who in management knows cyber? What are their roles? What are they doing to keep things, again, your policies updated, constantly looking at those? And I think it's not just with cyber, it's with all issues. And so I think, looking really critically at your accounting questions and your policies and procedures, and how you're accounting for various questions, I won't get too much in the weeds on accounting questions, but just making sure you're being vigilant and asking the hard questions about how everything's being done, about how folks are getting paid, about what your response is to climate and what you're putting out there, what you're saying, and how you're actually, making sure that what you're saying is what you're doing. I think all of these things are challenging, but I think making sure that the board is really just asking the tough questions, for me, it's not a specific answer to your question, but I think sort of that's what boards across the, across various sizes and across various companies, I think can do to really make sure that all of everything that's put in place is as effective as it can be.
Now, I think, if I could say that, I think it's a particularly apt response to the question in the sense that, at least from my vantage point, corporate governance at its core, perhaps at the risk of oversimplifying it, is really about decision making. And a key part of increasing the chance of making better decisions as compared to worse decisions, as measured against whatever the goal happens to be, is by making sure that good, tough questions are asked and folks have the opportunity to think about not only why they may be right, but why they may be wrong, what the risks are, how you manage those risks, And I take that as being very much consonant with what you were saying in terms of your view as to how boards ought to approach their role.
Yep, I think that's right.
In terms of coming back to the point of the amount of activity that's going on, one of the challenges can always be when there's an environment that's in flux in one way or another. How do you figure out what to do? How do you figure out, all right, if I do this today, but if things change tomorrow, the proverbial tomorrow, then do I have to come back and reassess? So predictability is often the word that gets bantied about. And as you were saying, and I think really did a great job illuminating for folks, there was a lot of regulatory change, as we said, things going on around the globe. There's also a lot of technological change. You referenced crypto and digital assets, but that's just a piece of it. There's other kinds of technological change, artificial intelligence, machine learning, et cetera. How do you think about, from your vantage point, given the important role you have, how does predictability and trying to create an environment where businesses at least know whether they prefer the outcome or prefer a different outcome, at least understand the lay of the land and have the chance to digest and take what they think think of as the appropriate steps? Does that factor into your decision making in terms of how you approach your job there at the Commission?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the issues with geopolitical concerns is predictability, right? That's something you have to think about because they don't always provide predictable scenarios or outcomes, as I learned in the military on a regular basis. And so I think predictability really is critical. And I think if you look at the majority of what the agency has put into place, the rules, the development of enforcement cases through what I'll call common law, I think provides for that predictability. I think most of our rules, it's important that we constantly look at and we constantly reassess. It's five humans sitting here at the Commission voting on recommendations that we don't have all that much time to review and comment on. Folks might be surprised that the 30-day comment period is about what I get as a commissioner. I get about 30 days, give or take, to look at a complete draft of all the rules we're putting out and make assessments with my fellow colleagues. And we're going to do the best job we can, but we're bound to make mistakes. So we do need to be constantly vigilant and assess where things that we as a current commission, what prior commissions did well and what work, where things aren't working, and where things are just need to be changed because times have changed. And so I think the majority really is predictable. I think the securities laws provide for that. The 33 Act, the 34 Act, the 40 Act, the Advisors Act, I think they provide sort of a baseline predictability. And I think most of the rules are not something that are changing frequently. That being said, every now and then we do look at something and we do change it. And to make sure we get that balance right, we look forward to public comment and we look forward to staff's advice. We look forward to seeing what international regimes are doing. And so we really take a long time to look at those places that we might change perhaps sooner than other things. And I think you can tell me if that was your experience, but that's really sort of my approach to looking at the various rulemaking and the various agenda that we have. And all of that keeping in mind is that we have sort of this baseline of rules that provides predictability. And we're going to evolve on that and look for changes where we need to. But we're going to follow those basic principles.
Yeah, use the word balance. Balance is the word that often comes up because you're always making trade-offs. Yep. There's always some benefits, some costs, and how do you strike that right balance? And people come to different conclusions. Yep. That's what makes the process so interesting. One final brief question is there anything that boards, directors can do to help you, to help the agency? You have a lot of tough responsibility, a lot of tough decisions to make. Is there a role for boards to play, or what is that role from your vantage point? Absolutely.
I think, one of the things that's always, I don't know that people really fully understand the value of is engagement with us. There are certain folks, and you can be on members of a variety of entities who come and see us, but just coming in to talk with us, writing letters, giving us your perspective. If there's a certain issue with a proposal, I want to hear about it. Just saying this is wrong and the agency is going to go forward with this and whatever the answer might be, it's come in and talk with us. Let us know, and ultimately we'll make a decision. And if it's not one that you like, or that is one you like, there's various paths forward to continue to engage with us. But just constant engagement, I think, is really the most critical aspect of everything that we do, and I think that's true on all of our rulemakings across the board. And I think one of the most important things in this current environment is giving us the perspective across all of the rules we're doing, right? So looking at the impact of the trading in markets and the IM rules and the Corp Fin rules all together. One of the things that I'm curious about is the interplay of all of these rules. As we come out with them, we often get comments on single rules, but not often on sort of the whole interplay of rules. And I think that's critical because we're not always thinking about the impact of one rule on another rule. We try to, but again, we might not always think about it from a way that board members are. And so I just really think that engagement and thinking high level about the impact is going to have, your businesses better than I will know your businesses. And so just giving it from your perspective is absolutely invaluable.
Well, Commissioner, thank you for a really enlightening and engaging conversation. Really appreciate it. It's certainly been an honor for me to have the chance to interview you and a chance to sit in today as a guest host for TK. TK will be back next week with another really exciting and interesting topic with a different guest. So look forward to having TK back. But once again, Commissioner Crenshaw, really appreciate it. And thanks for all you do.
And thank you. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for thinking of me.